If I just have a podcast, Apple and Spotify, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, can you believe it? Adam Adams started a podcast. We've got to get him in front of everyone because he's obviously got some good stuff. Why did I think that? Why did I think just by simply having a show that all of the podcast playing platforms were going to get so excited and push me in front of everyone? It's because I was dumb. I believed if you build it, they will come, and that doesn't automatically happen. So the character in this story is me. I was dedicated. I was trying to get this going, but it didn't end up working. Number 3 is the desire. So this part of the story is I didn't want to just podcast for fun. I wasn't looking for just something to enjoy my time. I wanted a podcast that actually fueled my business. I wanted to attract clients, passive investors, LPs, limited partners. I wanted to be able to have a show that got me results in my business and established me as the go-to authority in my space. But none of that happens when nobody is listening. I want to put crickets on right now. If you just have a few listeners, you're never going to be able to get the result that you want. So my desire was to have a successful podcast. The problem was, number 4, the problem. The problem was very simple. My episodes were invisible to my listener. Each one just stood alone. It was disconnected from others, and there was no reason for a listener to stick around after they heard an episode. Number 5, the struggle. I tried promoting more on social media. I was posting on social media literally up to 12 hours in a day and doing all my other work and with my kids and trying to exercise and stay healthy and making food. I spent so much extra time. I was working like 120 hours a week. And part of this was the 10, 12, 14 hours a day on social media. That was my struggle. I messed with titles. I messed with thumbnails, all of the surface level stuff that you see, but the downloads barely budged. The downloads that barely budged, they barely changed because the core problem was my content strategy. I'm going to share with you some of that. What's the epiphany? That's when I learned about something called callbacks and call forwards. 2 ridiculously easy techniques that immediately transform my podcast into a binge-worthy podcast experience. And that's when people listen over and over and over, and the algorithms notice that people are binging and listening. There's an algorithm. Think about it like this. What's the purpose of most social media platforms? What is the purpose of Apple Podcasts? What do they want to happen? They want the listener's attention. YouTube is trying to command attention. Facebook is trying to command attention. TikTok is, and all of these different platforms that are out there are fighting each other to keep eyeballs and earballs on their platform. So they build in algorithms that take things that people are already doing, listening to. They take algorithms that understand that a certain show or a certain episode or a certain layer of shows ends up getting somebody to listen to more shows because the Apple Podcast or Spotify wants you to stay on Spotify. So they're only going to promote you. They're only going to push you in front of more people if you're able to get binge-worthy content. So if you've got a podcast that's not calling back to old episodes or calling forward to new episodes, then you're less likely to have your listener stick around. And if your listener doesn't stick around and listen to multiple episodes, then the podcast player believes that you're worth nothing. And that's no offense to you, but the podcast player just is like, okay, we don't need to push him or her in front of anyone because they're not going to keep anyone on this platform. They're only going to keep pushing people in front of them that help the listener to stay in one place. So you can learn, here's the epiphany again, you can learn how do you keep people to listen to multiple episodes so that you can trigger the algorithm. Number 7, the result. I ran a 5-part series on my old podcast way before I sold it. Think of it like this. I went the first 38, 39 episodes, and I barely had like 60, 70, 80 downloads in an episode. Then I learned about callbacks and call forwards. Now, this was years and years ago. This is probably 2017 that I learned about how can I get people to listen to more than one episode so I can trigger these algorithms. And at that time, I decided, hey, my avatar, my listener to my podcast about real estate could really benefit if they started, it was a meetup group. I had a meetup group at the time that was world ranked. So out of 255,000 meetups, my meetup group in Denver was the absolute most, number one, the most well-attended meetup of not just of real estate, but of anything. I was an authority in this space. I was able to teach other people how to have a successful group because I had one of the most successful groups in the entire world. Like top 0.1%. Like huge, right? So I thought to myself, if I'm seeing 8,000 faces a year in my meetup group, and the number 2 meetup is only seeing about 1,000, I'm 8 times bigger than the number 2. And so I've got something I can share. So I created a series and I put it on episode 40 and also episode 42, 44, 46, and 48. So that's 5 different episodes: 40, 42, 46, 48, 40, 42, 44, 46, and 48. So all of the even numbers. I did this series and I recorded episode 40 and I called forward to 42, 4, 6, and 8. I did 44 and I called back to the last one. Hey, if you didn't check that out, and also you're going to want to hear these other things.